Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And this 2034 season has been a tale of two seasons thus far. We were a pretty bad team at the end of March and April as the season was getting underway, but we were a pretty good team in the month of May. And what that means and what that adds up to as we sit here on June 1st is that we're 29 and 28, a game above 500, 6.5 behind the defending World Series champion Texas Rangers in the division, and half a game out of one of the final wild card spots in the American League. So things could be better, but things could certainly be worse. And the hope is that we'll continue to play some better baseball over the next month or so. We don't feel desperate to do anything immediately since we have gotten the team back over 500, albeit perhaps temporarily. We never know. But importantly, there's just not too much that is all that interesting on the trade block quite yet either. Position player wise, we can see here, pitching wise, there's really nothing of interest on the trade block. And position player wise, there's one very familiar player who's available. That's last year's shortstop, Maui Ahuna, who we traded to Cleveland this offseason. And he is actually having a pretty productive year for them, a 117 WRC plus and a 1.9 WAR. Always confident in the defense that we would get from Ahuna, and he gave us really nice defense a year ago, but he's hitting much more in Cleveland than he hit for our Oakland squad last year. Still fragile physically, but still a very good defensive shortstop. Unfortunately, what they're looking for him straight up right now is a little high, particularly given that our replacement for him, the youngster Andy Toribio, is off to a pretty nice start. The Guardians right now are looking for some of the better players on our major league team or some of the better prospects in our organization, but not necessarily all top end prospects to send Ahuna back to us. It's good to know that he could be a potential option in the coming weeks and months, but definitely not someone that I feel we need to transact on immediately, given that we have gotten this team back to and over 500. The hope is that we'll have another winning month here in the month of June, get to the midway point in the season feeling pretty good about where we are, and then we will almost certainly have significant ability to take on some contracts as we get closer to the trade deadline, but have a better sense, hopefully, of exactly what weaknesses and holes we might need to be filling a month and a half, close to 2 months from now, at the end of July, compared to today. And if you've been looking closely here, you probably have noticed that we've taken a big hit in attendance this past year, which is pretty disappointing. We did have that big hit in the offseason when the one-year rental Kyle Manzardo left, and we took a 7-point hit to fan interest. Despite raising our ticket prices $1 this year, we actually sold more season tickets than we did a year ago, but unfortunately not as many people are showing up in these early stages of the season. Hopefully, if we put together another winning month here in June, fan interest will start to pick up as we get into the summer. You can see the trend over the past month or so as we've been playing better has generally been an upwards trend in terms of attendance. And hopefully we can keep that going, because certainly the fact that we are set right now to have revenue per game down 13% from a year ago is not optimal. And as we take a look ahead to what we're facing this month of June, we're going for a 4-game sweep on the road in Minnesota tonight. Then we'll be home for a series against Seattle and the Tigers. Back on the road for the White Sox, the Astros, and the Rangers before we get home again a little more than midway through the month. That homestand will be facing the Rockies, 4 games against Baltimore, and then back on the road out east for Tampa and Boston before we head into the month of July. And we won't give away all the secrets as far as what's been going on with our top players in our farm system, but we'll highlight a couple as we start getting ready for the draft and trying to make some promotions and clean up our minor league rosters a bit. We did just promote Doug Weiss, the player who we picked in the 4th round of last year's draft out of Austin P as a potential good reliever in a few years. He added that changeup in the offseason. He was successful in one of those very hard programs to add a new pitch. So now with the fact that he's got a 3-pitch arsenal, potentially 40 stamina, we've been using him as a starter. He was back in A ball to start the year. He went 8-1 with a 2.56 ERA, 68 strikeouts to just 11 walks in 63 1/3 innings, and consequently we just promoted him up to high A ball in the Midwest League. I think it is still certainly realistic to think that Weiss could be pitching in Double A before the end of this season. Another pitching prospect that we just promoted, Josh Mangano, the 2nd-round draft choice in 2028. The right-handed starting pitcher was 6-1 with a 3.83 ERA for us in Double A. We're going to promote him back up to Triple A, and we in fact just did that. He did pitch 5 games in Triple A at the end of last year. Wasn't incredibly effective, walking 18 batters in 29 2/3 innings. The control still definitely looks shaky, but he now has pitched 34 games, all starts. Actually, more than that. He's now pitched 43 games, all starts at the Double A level. And across parts of the last 3 seasons in Double A, he is 24-5 at that level. So certainly nothing else for the 23-year-old to approve there. Do question whether he's going to be able to walk few enough batters to be an effective pitcher at the major league level. But it's not inconceivable that if the next couple of months go well in Las Vegas, that he could end up being a September call-up for us this year to get his first major league experience. And a couple of injury issues. Elliot Bonello still out for another couple months with that torn rotator cuff. Jason DeCaro, we were very careful with him with a tender elbow. Put him on the IL a few days ago. He should be healed from that and get a little bit of extra rest time before he comes back. One minor league injury of note, Julio Del Campo, the infielder who we picked up in the trade of Bertrand Albrighton right before the season started, was up with the big club for a little while and did fine. He's also actually done fine in Las Vegas, where he's been learning how to play second base. Unfortunately, he fractured his hand about a week and a half ago at this point. Probably going to miss about the entire month of June. So unfortunately, it's going to be a little while before he could potentially be in the mix for a return to the majors for us. Positively, we do have Alejandro Landin back from his injury, and he's actually learning how to play right field on the fly right now. But I think ultimately his role for us is going to be as an infielder. The number 58 prospect in baseball, who was an IAFA signing of ours over 7 years ago at this point, hitting 260 with 7 homers and 14 ribbies in 104 AAA at-bats, put up a 121 WRC plus. I think between Landin and Del Campo, we do have some decent middle infield options that are not far away from the majors if they're healthy, which certainly lets me feel like we can be patient in terms of a potential reunion with Ahuna. I don't think it's something we necessarily need at all, but if we have significant injuries over the next month and a half, it might be something that we think about more seriously, or if the price on Ahuna just happens to drop from where it is today, adding a glove like that to a team like ours certainly wouldn't be the worst thing to consider. And we did win the final game of the series against Minnesota to sweep 4 games on the road. Jason DeCaro setback in his recovery from a tender elbow. We knew he was going to be on the IL for longer than we thought he needed, so even though it's going to take at least a week, still will probably have some time left with the 15 days he needed to be on the IL. But I tend to be pretty conservative when a pitcher has an arm injury, and I'm either going to sit them out or put them on the IL when anything like an elbow is involved. No guarantees that it won't flare up again in the future, but want to make sure that he is getting all of the rest that we can possibly give him, so we're not unnecessarily exacerbating that injury and perhaps increasing the chance that it turns into something even more serious sooner rather than later. And our rent-a-closer for this season, Luke Little, has reached out about a contract extension. He's making close to $18 million this year, but fortunately we got our division rival Astros to keep most of that contract by sending them a pretty solid package in return for a 1-year rental. Little hasn't been great with us. The ERA back up over 4, and he has walked 12 batters in just 21 1/3 innings pitched. He is requesting 3 years at $18 million a pop, as much as we like the 33-year-old left-hander, and as much as he, over the course of his major league career, has been an excellent pitcher with a ERA plus and FIP minus well above league average pretty much every year of his career until this past season and a half, where his ERAs have been somewhat more pedestrian, although his FIP minuses are still pretty good. That said, $18 million a year for 3 years for a soon-to-be 34-year-old closer, probably not the direction that Oakland's going to go with the money we may have to spend this upcoming offseason. So although we appreciate Luke Little's enthusiasm and interest in returning at the numbers he is looking for, probably not going to happen. Another potential injury issue, Mike Lambert just suffered a sprained ankle that's going to impact him for a week. Moderate impact on his throwing, so we're going to have to decide whether we want to put him on the IL for 2 weeks or kind of pitch through things. We do have an off day tomorrow, so that'll allow us to set the rotation up a little bit in his absence. But still, whoever pitches tomorrow is likely going to have to come back on short rest unless we make a move. So have some things to think about as far as setting up the rotation effectively if we're not going to put Lambert on the IL. The positive thing is that the month's off to a real good start. As you know, we won that final game against Minnesota. We swept a 3-game homestand against Seattle, and then we just took 2 out of 3 to finish off the homestand against Detroit. So a 6-1 start to the month. The record is up to 35-29, and with Texas not playing so good as late, we're only 2 games behind the Rangers in the division, and we're actually 1 game up on the final wild card spot now. So this 9-1 record over our last 10 has really helped us as far as our potential playoff positioning. You can see Colt Keith is now 3rd in the AL in batting average, and Keith is having a monster season for us. 14 doubles, 16 home runs, and 41 ribbies in just 220 at-bats. And DeCaro is now ready to come off of the IL, and just in time because Lambert still needs another day to recover. What we're going to do is send Jaheim Pennyman down. That'll let us pitch DeCaro today, and then Lambert will be ready to go tomorrow, hopefully. Pennyman was really good in his first start with us, 1 run over 6 innings. His 2 starts since then, certainly not as smooth, just 9 2/3 innings total. We always know control is going to be the potential issue with Jaheim Pennyman. and he did walk 9 batters in 15 and 2/3 innings. He's been basically a replacement level pitcher for us in those 3 starts. So we're going to send Pennyman down to AAA for the time being, promote Caro, or DeCaro, back to the roster, and we did lose 2 out of 3 to begin this road trip against the White Sox. Hopefully we'll play better over the next week or so at Houston, and then after them we had somebody else before we come back home. I can't remember who it was offhand. Oh, Texas. And so a couple of division rivals over the next week before we get back home. And although, as we talked about, we did lose 2 out of 3 to begin the road trip at the White Sox, after that, things were great. We lost the first game against Houston, came back, won 2 in a row to take that series, and then we just took 3 in a row on the road against the Texas Rangers. And what that means is that as we sit here on July 19th, we've completely turned this season around. We are a game and a half up on the Rangers in the AL West. So after that slow start to the season, the team played good, as we talked about in May. And thus far in June, we've been playing great. Jake Ortega is now second in the American League in batting average, third in batter WAR. And Ortega was a big part of what we did over the past week, winning the American League Player of the Week, 12 for 25 with a homer, 5 runs, and 7 ribbies. And the former third overall pick for us out of Oregon State in 2029 continues to just get better and better. 344 average this year, as we talked about, 171 WRC plus, and he has put up a 3.9 WAR for us, and it is only June 19th. And we've made it towards the end of the month, and our mid-season review. Things have been a little choppy over the last week and a half or so. We split a 2-game series against Colorado, split a 4-game series at home against Baltimore, and we have now lost 2 out of 3 in Tampa, and we're now in Boston for the final game of the month. Just got our mid-year review today from Mr. Fisher as far as the goals. He's content, it sounds like, with our 45-37 record, although he was expecting more from us. He's glad that we extended Jackson Ferris. He says that we're doing okay building our farm system, but still have work to do. Progress by our homegrown players has been incredible this year as far as improving our draft record. Certainly Jake Ortega, a huge part of that. And we continue to struggle improving on our fan interest. That has been a constant battle for us throughout this playthrough. And we did win the final game of June against Boston 5-4. Andy Toribio has been named AL Rookie of the Month for a second time. Hit .355 with 4 home runs and 15 ribbies. He's the man who has taken over at shortstop for us for Maui Ahuna, who we were talking about earlier in the episode, and certainly very pleased with what Toribio has given us this year, especially with the bat. Taking a look at the standings just past the midway point of the season, with the struggles we've had over the last week and a half, we have slipped a game behind the Rangers in the AL West, but we are in the number 1 wild card spot in the American League, 3.5 games up on the Angels for the final wild card spot, 4 games up on the Yankees and Rays from potentially missing the playoffs entirely. So we did make pretty good progress over the month of June. Ortega with his .352 average, second in the league. Ortega third in batter WAR, and also has the 3rd longest hitting streak in the AL this year. Taking a look at our team statistics, the 17-9 month we had in June was even better than the 17-11 record that we put up in May. Still, the offense isn't great. We are 10th in the American League in runs scored at this point. 2nd in WAR, 3rd in batting average, 1st in hits. What we're really struggling with is hitting the long ball and drawing walks. Our 46 and 37 record is actually a game worse than expectations. The pitching staff continues to improve. We're up to fourth in the American League in runs allowed. The bullpen ERA has been the best in the league all year, still under 3. And the starters have made a lot of progress over the last month. We're only 8th, so perfectly middle of the pack in terms of starters ERA. But we had been near the bottom of the league for the first couple months of the season with an ERA that was still over 5. So pitching much better over the last 4.5 weeks to get that ERA for the year down to 4.43. First in defensive efficiency and first in zone rating. So even though we have lost a little bit defensively with Taribo playing short for us instead of Ahuna, it hasn't been a significant downgrade in our team defense overall. And in fact, being first in both categories, on paper at least, we've got a better defense than we had a year ago. Taking a look at our pitching in a little more detail here, just past the midway point of the season, Jackson Ferris leads the team with 7 wins, 7-5 record, although the ERA has increased to over 4 this year. His Sierra of 2.72 is really solid, however, but only a 1 WAR from him. Certainly we're hoping for a performance closer to what we got over the last couple of years from him with the big money extension we gave him this past offseason. Hopefully he'll be better over the second half of the year. Jason DeCaro, 5-2 with a 4.79 ERA, also not as good as he's been over the last couple of years. He has spent some time on the IL, as we've talked about. Hopefully we'll get a little more out of him in the second half as well. Mike Lambert, the new addition, only a 500 record, 3-3, so only involved in 6 decisions in his first 16 starts. But he's put up a 3.28 ERA, which is really solid. He has given up 14 home runs in 82 1/3 innings, though, and looking at his ability to keep the ball in the park, that's a bit surprising. Less than a win above replacement level, as probably gotten a little bit lucky with just a 251 BABIP. And as we noted, he has given up a fair amount of home runs for the relatively low amount of hits he's given up. Mason Miller has actually improved a bit of late, but 5-7 with a 6.72 ERA. Not exactly what we were potentially hoping to see from him in what will likely be his final year in Oakland. He's allowed 16 homers and 36 walks in just 75 innings pitched. And his stuff is definitely not even what it was a year ago. He's lost a couple miles an hour off the fastball. The stuff not as intimidating as it once was. Miller has been pitching a bit better of late. We talked last episode about his spot in the rotation being in jeopardy, but after an 8.36 ERA in April and 7.71 in May, he did improve to a 4.15 ERA in the month of June as he tries to fend off some of the guys in our bullpen to keep a spot in the rotation. And Jamie DeVore, he's the pitcher who we had some issues with this past offseason. He lost 15 points of stamina, also lost a mile off his fastball after a unpleasant trends in his development, but hasn't been as good as he was a year ago. 3-5 record as opposed to the 13-8 that he put up in his first year in Oakland. But the 3.38 ERA is still more than respectable, and he's put up a win above replacement. If he continues to perform that way as our number 5 starter, we're not going to have any complaints with him. Luke Little, the rental closer, 5 wins, 15 save, an ERA of 3.33. He's been good, but not great, walking too many batters. Levi Sterling, not exactly what we were hoping for out of the closer role. He has been a high-volume guy for us, already pitched in 46 games and 66 2/3 innings. But the 3-8 record is not impressive, and the 14 home runs allowed in just 66 2/3 innings is not ideal. He's almost a win below replacement level, and the fact that he has been not pitching as well recently may mean that we keep Miller in the rotation for the foreseeable future. Another guy who could take Miller's spot is Caden Dana, the right-handed reliever. Has put up a 2.50 ERA over 54 innings this year, so he's been doing a nice job for us. Jeremy Scholl has been very good out of the pen, 3-1 record, 8 holds, 33 strikeouts, and a 2.08 ERA in just 30 and a third innings pitched, holding batters to a batting average against of under 200 on the season. And the lefty R.J. Cope also very solid, 38 strikeouts in just 26 innings for the young lefty. He is our occasional two-way player, just 1 for 6 this year, couple of ribbies, and he did, of course, have that walk on opening day when we used him as a pinch hitter, for those of you who watched as we played out that game. Not a particularly high volume or useful offensive player, but he does have the ability, in theory, to hit the ball out of the park, although he has yet to have a major league home run in an admittedly very small sample size. Chris Carl, another lefty, having a nice year for us. 2.36 ERA with 9.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. Ian Outh, the right-handed reliever, a 1.52 ERA over 23 and 2/3 innings pitched. Has walked a lot of batters, probably getting a bit lucky with his performance thus far. You can see his Sierra is more than 2 runs worse than his actual ERA. And last, but fortunately not least, Ted Johnston, who started the year in AAA, although he didn't even end up pitching there because we brought him up relatively quickly, has been outstanding for us. An ERA of just over 2, pitching 61 and a third innings, only over 21 games. He's been our long reliever, inning eater when we've needed him to be, and he's gone 4-0 as far as decisions, started a game for us in a pinch, and if he's the worst pitcher on your team, I think you're in a pretty good spot, and that's how I feel we are with the pitching staff. Always am on the lookout for help, but I certainly don't feel like we are desperately in need of much in the pitching department. We will turn our attention now to our mid-year review of our position players, and just based on the fact that I know this roster and we haven't been scoring as many runs as we would like, my hunch is that there's probably some more obvious opportunities for improvement in the trade market over the next month as far as our everyday players. Jaden Boakai's gotten a second consecutive opportunity to be our starting catcher, and he's actually making a lot more of that opportunity this year than he did a year ago. He's got his batting average up 50 points to 254. Not hitting doubles like he did a year ago, but does have 7 homers and 33 ribbies and 240 at-bats. 81 WRC plus is fine for a catcher with his excellent defensive ability. He's close to a win above replacement. Still think, looking at that contact in his batting profile, maybe he can be a little better than an 81 WRC plus player offensively. But if he's borderline respectable with that glove, I think he's got the opportunity to be pretty valuable for us. Chris Laughlin, we traded for him this offseason. He's hitting 237 and 59 at-bats as our backup catcher. 56 WRC plus. He's basically been replacement level. Another good, solid defensive catcher, although his arm is not quite as good as Boakai's. If there's a great catcher available, we certainly could upgrade at the position, but I don't think it is a desperate position of need for us quite yet. Turning to our infielders, Brian Ramos is a rental for us this season, and he's been pretty solid. A 259 average, 21 doubles, 4 triples, and 13 homers with 42 ribbies and 316 at-bats. adds up to a 118 WRC plus and a 1.5 WAR. So the veteran, another guy who we picked up in a trade with our division rival Astros, is doing a pretty solid job for us this year after his work as a rental a season ago did not go incredibly well for us. Kevin Stubblefield is doing a little better this year than last year, hitting 271 with 4 homers and 96 at-bats, 107 WRC plus. We were hoping when we signed Stubblefield to a long contract with minimal major league experience a few years ago that he might develop into a Tyler Soderstrom type offensive player for us. Given that he's now 25 years old, it seems like that's not going to happen, but he is an above average offensive player. He's now has 792 major league at-bats, 30 homers, 45 doubles, 99 ribbies. He is a solid offensive player. Nothing more, nothing less. Not much defensively. His speed still remains an enigma to me. He's got good speed, good stealing aggressiveness, good stealing ability, and is an excellent base runner. But only 3 for 3 stealing this year. And you can see in the strategy settings, we do have him running aggressively on the bases fairly often, but might want to bump those up a little bit, actually. We'll bump them both. We'll bump the stealing bases up another notch. It just seems, I don't know if it's a lack of opportunity or what, but only 3 stolen bases for him is not exactly what we're hoping for. Second baseman Sergio Estrada, barely hitting 200 and 241 at-bats. The WRC plus has plunged to 50 this year after he finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting a year ago, coming over from Cuba. Basically has been a replacement level player this year. Perhaps some less playing time for Estrada, either driven by bringing up a Del Campo or a Landin, or perhaps making a trade for somebody like Ahuna could be a way to potentially improve this roster a bit. We like Estrada's glove and his versatility, but the bat this year has definitely taken a step backwards, and given that he's now on the other side of 30, I think it's probably more likely that what he's doing right now is what he is for the future, rather than that solid offensive season he had a year ago. Colt Keith, what can you say? Batting over 300 with 20 homers and 53 ribbies, 151 WRC plus, and a WAR of close to 3 for the veteran third baseman who's been our cleanup hitter ever since the day he joined us. Isreber Stewart, hitting 264 in 129 at-bats. The 112 WRC plus is pretty positive. He's a versatile defensive player, although he's not particularly good anywhere except for first base. He's competent at third. The rest of the positions, he's a guy who we can put out there in a pinch. He is a guy who's out of options at this point, which is part of what helped him make the team. I like his bat as a utility infielder. I would like Stewart even more if the glove was a little better. Unfortunately, it is what it is as far as Isreber Stewart. I don't think he's a key member of our team for the next 3 to 5 years, but the way he's hitting, he does have some value. And then Andy Toribio, we've talked about a lot, having a monster rookie season, 328 average, 21 doubles, 4 triples, 12 homers, and 48 ribbies in the first 80 games of the season. 148 WRC plus with a 3.6 WAR. Taking a look at his fielding statistics, he's now actually a slightly above average defensive shortstop, so he's gotten more comfortable at the major league level at that position over the course of the year. I think that the contract we signed him to after he had just 10 major league games could end up being a huge asset to this Oakland A's organization going forward based on the way he has played so far. The only criticism is that he's only got a 60% success rate stealing, 6 for 10 on the base paths. But other than that, Toribio's season has gone great. As we talked about, he's been AL Rookie of the Month twice and is probably a very strong candidate to be the American League Rookie of the Year here in 2034. So as I think about the infield, Ramos is doing his job at first, Keith's doing his job at third, Stewart's doing his job at Toribio's doing his job at shortstop. Stewart and Stubblefield are kind of actually doing their job as utility infielders. The issue is we probably only need one right-handed bat-only middle infielder or utility infielder who really can't play those middle infield spots. So there's a little bit of redundancy there perhaps with Stubblefield and Stewart. And then Estrada at second base has been disappointing, but he could certainly still have value for the team in a more utility infield role if we do end up moving in a different direction at second base. Turning to the outfield, starting off with Ortega, and things are going well with him. 352 average, 24 doubles, 4 triples, 10 homers, 49 runs scored, 49 ribbies, and 14 steals. The 174 WRC plus set to be the highest of his career, and with a 4.6 WAR here on July 1st, barring a very upsetting second half of the year from Mr. Ortega, he should easily set a career high in WAR on the season. Luis Taveras, the left fielder, hitting 252 with 6 homers and 131 at-bats. 94 WRC plus, so he's been a bit below average. He's another guy similar to Isreber Stewart and Kevin Stubblefield, a right-handed hitter who's a solid right-handed bat. Okay defensively at positions that aren't incredibly important defensively. Potentially moving on from a Stubblefield, a Stewart, or a Taveras over the next month might be something to think about. Center fielder Luis Lara, the batting average has fallen to 233, so it's dropped about 10 points this year. Does have 9 stolen bases on the season, but the WRC plus has dropped to 80. Still has put up a 1.6 WAR thanks to the really good defense he plays in center field, but the on-base percentage has dipped back below 300 this season. He's now wrecked physically rather than fragile, so Lara be turning 30 this upcoming offseason, still under contract for a few years, but he basically only plays against right-handed pitching now. I think in a perfect world, we'd love to get him out of that leadoff role against righties, if at all possible. Juan Acevedo is the international. He's not an international free agent. He's a free agent signing from the independent leagues we made this past offseason. And he started the year in AAA for us, but with the long injury to Elliot Bonello, he's been up with us for a while now and hasn't gone well. He's hitting a .93 with only 2 homers and 181 at-bats. A 56 WRC plus from a starting corner outfielder is not what we're looking for. He's been below replacement level, and that's a spot that clearly we think we can upgrade at. And Bobby Cabral is having a brutal season as well. So the corner outfielders are definitely our weak links at this point. Cabral hitting just a .84 with 8 home runs and 239 at-bats. His WRC plus of 55 is cut in half from where it was over the first 2 years of his career in Oakland. And he's been more than a win below replacement level given that brutal offensive performance. 112 strikeouts already, striking out in almost half of his at-bats. So I think the area that we want to improve is pretty obvious. We've got a right fielder who's batting second against right-handed pitching, who's hitting under 200. And we've got a DH who's batting sixth for us against right-handed pitching, who's also hitting under 200. And getting one or both of those guys on track and or replacing one or both of them, perhaps through the trade market, could be a pretty simple way to hopefully improve this roster. Take a quick updated look at who's available on the trade block. Maui Ahuna and Luis Rodriguez still out there. A couple of catchers, Samuel Basallo and Carter Jensen, center fielder Brando Maea, as well as the shortstop Marcelo Meyer. So there are some interesting players that could potentially help us who are available. I don't see a left-handed power-hitting corner outfielder who's an obvious solution. You see some guys like Dylan Beavers, Carson Benji, Justin Crawford, O'Neal Cruz, Drew Gilbert. There's not an obvious answer as far as a left-handed hitter who would be an obvious upgrade for us in the corner outfield spots. We are still at this point 5 to 6 weeks away from Elliot Bonello's potential return. He wasn't hitting great for us, but he still was hitting over 250 in the limited sample size he had. So certainly would think that with Bonello's potential return, that could solve one of our corner outfield issues. I guess the hope would be that in the meantime, either Mr. Taveras or Cabral also turns things around and gets more productive if we don't end up making a trade for some help. Quickly, you'll take a look at the pitchers that are on the trading block at this point as well to see if there might be some help there. As we talked about earlier, I feel pretty good about our pitching staff at this point. The highest rated guy out there is Harleen Susanna of the Angels. Doesn't quite honestly look like there's any true impact pitchers available at this point. That probably will change over the next few weeks. So if you have any ideas on what you would recommend we do in the trade market over the next month, who you might stick with, who you might move on from, always helpful to get that kind of feedback in the comments to the episode. But we're going to sim ahead another week and a half or so before we finish things off. We do have a late first round pick with 2 supplemental first round picks between the first and the second round. So although we're not going to be picking until, I believe, around pick number 30, we're going to have 3 of the next 10 picks once we're on the clock or something in that neighborhood. So want to take a look at who's going to be available in the draft for us, and also hopefully tap into the wisdom of our worldwide scouting department by kind of looking and seeing who's available before we finish this episode up. And Juan Acevedo, the outfielder that we talked about, going to be impacted by back tightness for 2 weeks. It impacts his hitting, his throwing, and his running. So we have put him onto the 10-day IL. He does have the batting average over the Mendoza line, so he's played a little better of late, but still not great. And we're going to call up Bob Day. You may remember we had picked him out of Pepperdine a few years ago. We ended up trading him away to Houston this past offseason. They waived him. We picked him back up, and he has been very productive for us in AAA, hitting .299 with 28 home runs and 69 ribbies in 284 at-bats. A versatile defensive player, but not particularly good. We've talked about it. We've got a lot of right-handers who meet that profile. That's part of the reason we were willing to trade Day away this past off season, but he'll get his most consistent playing time at the major league level that he ever has, and we'll see if he can do anything to spark this offense over the next several days until we get to draft day 2034. And our performance through the first 8 games of July has been pretty average. It's the definition of average, actually, with a 4-4 record through our first 8 games. But we have made it to July 11th and the first-year player draft. We are in a flat-footed tie for the Rangers for the AL West, and our Rangers and A's are tied for the second wild card spot as well, 3 games up on the Orioles for the final wild card spot. As we get ready for the draft, Ortega's .339 average, third in the American League. He's tied for second in batter war, still has that hitting streak that we've talked about. Nobody else on the leaderboards here in Oakland. As we get ready for the first-year player draft, as I mentioned, our first pick, 30th overall. So the top prospects are likely to be off the board. But then after that, we do have 2 supplemental picks. Looks like we'll be picking 36th and 39th. So picks 30, 36, and 39 will be coming up for Oakland. So it's going to be an interesting opportunity with our worldwide scouting department. For those of you who have the time and inclination, would definitely appreciate some thoughts on which direction you would go, because we will sim ahead now to our 30th pick, and that means that we're going to be making 3 of the next 9 picks in this draft. So a definite opportunity for our viewers to hopefully help us make the right decisions with these 3 upcoming picks that we're going to have. And we will go ahead, get the draft started, and we will auto pick until our first selection. And we are on the board at number 30 overall. Some pretty highly regarded hitters that are out there. We will take a quick look at everyone who's a 4-star or higher prospect. As I mentioned, we're going to have 3 of the next 9 picks, so I want to try to show as a wide an opportunity set as possible for the worldwide scouting department. Joe Wusow, a 18-year-old right fielder. He's durable, has a pretty interesting potential bat. Average speed, not much of a glove, and some negative personality traits, but a guy who's committed to Indiana State. Left-handed hitter, not looking for a ton of money, and that bat for a 30th pick in the draft doesn't look horrible. Wilson Pata, a center fielder, guy with a pretty well-balanced bat, a little bit better defensively, similar speed, some more positive personality traits for the left-handed hitting outfield prospect. Doug Mitchell, another guy listed as a center fielder, another decent-looking bat, okay glove, decent speed, some pretty positive personality traits for him. His signability is impossible, so Mitchell likely looking for some really big money. Kevin Kellums, another shortstop with a pretty balanced profile. A lot of these guys, it looks like the eye is their big issue. Kellums, a little more speed and a little better range than the other guys. He's also durable, but he probably has the worst personality of anyone we've looked at, with low leadership and work ethic among some other personality flaws. Shortstop John Howard, another impossible to sign guy, competent defensively, not much speed, a pretty interesting bat and good durability for a middle infielder, but he is committed to Stanford, going to be looking for a lot of money. Ranciel Sear, a left fielder. He is a pure power hitter, but looks like he could hit a wacky number of home runs. Not a lot of speed, pretty bad defensively. The final 4-star ceiling prospect is catcher Willibald Bullard. Pretty bad defensively, not a ton of speed, but he's durable, and he's got a decent bat for a catcher. Dual American and German citizenship for the switch-hitting catcher. Moving up to 3 4.5-star prospects, center fielder Sawyer Wenda, solid range, respectable speed, and another guy with contact, gap power, and home run power above average, and a kind of average-looking eye if he meets his full potential. Center fielder Greg Moreno, impossible to sign, very well-balanced bat with good speed, looks like more of a corner outfielder, high adaptability and intelligence, certainly an interesting prospect, but likely to be a costly one. Right fielder Juan Medina, like the high leadership, adaptability, and work ethic. Corner outfielder without much speed, but looks like a pretty solid bat, left-handed hitter who could be above average at everything if he fully develops, with borderline excellent home run power. And then the top prospect is a guy who's got a couple of personality quirks, but center fielder Andres Vigo looks like more of a corner outfielder, not a ton of speed. He is a durable left-handed hitter and potentially has exceptional home run power, along with contact, gap power, and eye that could be a bit above average. Low leadership, adaptability, and loyalty. Not perfect, but some interesting prospects out there. Can't say there's anyone who I'm absolutely in love with, but if we have to take 1 or 2 or even 3 of these guys over the next 9 picks, I think we could certainly do worse than that. But the hope is that there might be some pitchers that we can layer in as well. We'll take a look at the 3.5-star or higher potential pitchers. Billy Thompson, a respectable starting pitching prospect, potential 4-pitch arsenal, stuff, movement, and control that could all be above average. Not a ton of stamina, but a 18, soon to be 19-year-old, throws in the low to mid 90s, ground ball tendencies, high work ethic. Certainly a guy I'd consider. Mike Moscaret, another starting pitching prospect. He's only a 3-pitch guy, and only if the changeup develops. Don't necessarily love his arsenal. We think best case scenario is his stuff is below average, average movement, above average control. Does have some positive personality traits. Probably not the type of guy I'd want to take in the first round. Zaire McKenneth, 18-year-old, potential 6-pitch arsenal, so a pretty versatile arsenal for the 18-year-old out of Texas. I think his stuff, movement, and control could all be average or a little above if he completely works out. The right-hander is already throwing in the mid-90s. Chris Hedge, 17-year-old. He's listed as a relief pitcher. He does have a potential 4-pitch arsenal, but with that 30 stamina, the bullpen probably is the right place for him. We think his stuff could be outstanding with good movement and above-average control. 17 years old, and he's already throwing in the mid-90s, high adaptability and work ethic. I don't know that I take a high school reliever in the first round, but if Chris Hedge is around a little while down the line, he could be an interesting prospect. Kevin Fifield, starting pitching prospect, potential 4-pitch guy, but he's going to need some work on his curve, changeup, and knuckle curve to get there. I think his stuff, movement, and control could all be above average. Really good stamina, really bad at holding on runners. Another 18-year-old who's already throwing in the mid-90s with ground ball tendencies, so definitely some stuff to like about Snowball. Danny Dakar, a 17-year-old starting pitching prospect. Some positive personality traits with the loyalty, adaptability, and work ethic. He's durable. Potential 4-pitch arsenal if that changeup develops, and honestly, his fastball, slider, and curve aren't too far off major league quality. I think his stuff, movement, and control could all be above average if he fully develops. The final 3.5-star prospect, Federico Areola, 17-year-old, averages stuff, plus movement, plus control. Potential 5-pitch arsenal. Although we don't think any of the pitches are really going to be outstanding. Solid stamina, really good at holding on runners. Probably not quite a first-round pick, but does seem like some of these pitchers are likely to be available in the second round where there could be some good value. The 3 highest ceiling pitching prospects, starting pitcher Rory Newman, an 18-year-old right-hander out of Abbeville, Louisiana. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, but he's definitely got some work to do to get there. Like the high work ethic, stamina is borderline. Think his stuff and his control could both be well above average and above average movement if everything works out well. Very borderline two-way player as well for Rory Newman. Closer John Christian, a 17-year-old out of Long Island. A cutter/knuckle curve combination, throws in the mid-90s. I think his stuff could be absolutely filthy, although he's got a long way to go to get there with average-ish movement and control if he fully develops. And then the highest ceiling pitching prospect is a southpaw, the 6'4" lefty out of Canada, Edison Faulau, out of Quebec City. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, but the changeup and sinker both need work to get there, and we don't really think the sinker's a high-end pitch. Good stamina, excellent at holding on runners. I think the stuff, movement, and control could all be above average to borderline excellent if he fully develops. Competition level poor in the Montreal area where he has been playing, but another interesting prospect for us to consider. So this is my first look at the draft. I'm going to spend a fair amount of time offline digging into it, but if you have any initial impressions, would love to hear them. I also will share the first couple rounds of the mock draft with those of you who like to check on these things. I don't know that I'm going to really be great at remembering all of the names that we've already seen or not seen. Certainly I do remember Ransile Sear. Second round, see some more familiar names that we've been looking at, especially some of those pitchers. I know we talked about Kevin Fifield already, Edison Faulau. So it definitely does seem like there could be potential for some of these pitchers to be around. Joe Wusso, who was, I believe, the first prospect that we talked about, a guy I kind of liked. He's not projected to go until our pick in the second round. If we like him, it might be a little risky to wait that long, but Wusso certainly seems like someone we could probably get with our second supplemental pick 9 picks from now if we decided to go in his direction and wait a little bit. So we've got a lot to think about. Appreciate any thoughts from the viewers on what to do in the trade market, or maybe who to think about or dig into a little more as far as the draft. Looks like we have been generating more revenue, getting more fans in the seats, and most importantly, obviously more fans in the seats is higher attendance, but looks like fan interest has bumped up a couple of points as the teams have been playing really well over the past month and a half or so. So that is positive as well. And as we sit here on July 11th and get ready for the draft, our A's are in a position where if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. So that certainly represents some significant progress from where we were at the start of this episode just about 7 weeks ago or not even 7 weeks ago, more like 6.5 weeks ago in game time. So things are going reasonably well for our Oakland A's here in 2034, and we will tackle the draft in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.